I was gonna say he's not joining staff. Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew. Again, I didn't know if you were training a replacement.
If I happen to hop around, if someone chats, you can just say, but
All right. When you're ready, just give me a countdown. Oh, we started. Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ascelia 7th Age. I know you're normally expecting to see our game on this day, but it is Thanksgiving, and a lot of our players are not available. So I wanted to give you some content, and we're going to do some DM tricks and tips that will help you enhance your games a little bit and address some topics that you don't always see addressed. One thing that I really want to ask you to do before we begin is take a moment, if you're on Twitch, to follow us. Subscribe if you want to. You can subscribe through Prime. If you're on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, and all of that stuff. It really helps to grow the channel, and it doesn't cost you anything. I do appreciate it. If you like these things, please comment. Let us know. If you have any questions, comments, queries, you can talk into the live chat. I'll have someone read those off if need be. And if you like this kind of content, we can try to make this more of a regular thing in addition to the game to add more content for you to view. As always, we are hosted by Challenges Games and Comics in Tucker, Georgia. It's a wonderful comic store that supplies us with our cameras, our lighting, and a place that's very well organized for us to play in and for us to host the stream from. I recommend checking them out. They have a lot of good products, especially for gaming, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, pretty much everything you need to know for card gaming. They have comic books, different gaming materials, and also my gaming material hit of the week is definitely going to be Heroes of Faerun, the Player's Guide, Player's Handbook. I just got a hold of it, and it is really, really nice. I'm actually going to be taking parts of it and incorporating them into Ascelia when I give them my own flavor. But enough about that. We're here to see some Game Master tips, tricks, and general content. I have prepared a number of topics for us today. The first one is verisimilitude and logic in gaming, or how to combine story, mechanics, and setting to create a more immersive game for you and your players. So the easiest way to put this would be when you are looking at how to incorporate everything, a lot of players and a lot of DMs will just kind of build backward, where they will kind of sit back and go, I want these powers, I'm going to take these powers and I'm going to just build a framework and my story doesn't matter, my background doesn't matter, it's all fluff. I'm not a fan of that. I don't really like that. When I design something, I want it to make sense within universe. I used a word that a lot of people aren't really super familiar with called verisimilitude. Verisimilitude basically means suspension of disbelief within the logic of the setting, which is a little different from just suspension of disbelief. To put it this way, I would say that you can have something that's realistic, but doesn't fit with verisimilitude. For example, if you're watching Lord of the Rings, and someone flies over the battlefield on a dragon breathing fire on the orcs, no one's going to bat an eyelash. It fits with the setting. It makes sense. No one's going to question it. It works. If Frodo climbs into an F-16 and flies over the forces of Mordor while firing Hellfire missiles, yeah, it's technically more realistic, but it would completely break the setting. And so that's what we kind of talk about when we talk about verisimilitude. I'm going to look at this one from a little bit of a player perspective also when you're designing a character. I'm going to use a character, or well, not a character. We'll just work on a story or an adventure idea. Let's say you, as a game master, want to do an adventure where your player characters are going to go through a dangerous labyrinth to explore a wizard's tower. That sounds really cool, but you need to start asking logical questions about why and how these things work. And this is where you come up with a story for it. Story is all important in role-playing games, especially in Dungeons and Dragons. So in this case, we're going to start off with, we know a wizard is going to be at the core of this. We want a wizard's tower. That is sacrosanct. That is absolutely going to be there, and we want a labyrinth. So what if this wizard, after doing many experiments and summoning demons and doing the things that reclusive wizards do, has gone insane? He has seen and learned something that has broken his mind. He has grown paranoid and fearful of everything. And so he started out building a wall around his tower. But adventurers kept coming. Now in his mind, his warped, paranoid mind, these adventurers are after something from him. They want his knowledge. They want his power. They are a threat to him. And so he killed them. He murdered them with his magic. He poisoned them. And because he believed they were a threat, this is what he believed he had to do. However, they kept coming. The wall didn't stop them. And so he started building out and building a labyrinth around the edges of his domain. He built twists and turns, loaded them with traps and pitfalls. He lured creatures in to devour those foolish enough to enter. Well, now we have a story. You have a labyrinth that your players can explore. You have reasons to have combat encounters. Maybe there's a minotaur running the maze. Maybe you can have different structures in the maze. Like, if you're going to have creatures that live in the maze, you're going to want some kind of water source so they have something to drink from. Unless maybe they're undead. It could be a number of things. Maybe there's summoned demons that are trapped. But regardless, you've got a good framework to have some good combat encounters in the maze before the players reach the wizard's tower. Now we're going to look at the wizard's tower itself from a factor story. So this is an insane mage. Well, first, if this is a tower, this is where a wizard lived, you need to cover a number of the things that a wizard's tower would have. So to kind of build on this, what are you going to need to have a wizard survive? You need a couple of things that are definite. One, let's assume this wizard has an apprentice. So you're going to want a bedroom for the apprentice, and you're going to want a bedroom for the wizard. The wizard's secret bedroom kind of lair. You're going to want a laboratory for the wizard to do his strange experiments and his summonings. You're going to want a kitchen where they prepare food because they're going to need to eat. And you're going to want privy rooms, places where they can use the bathroom and relieve themselves. Those are going to be the core. And of course, what wizard's tower is complete without a study? You're going to want a study. So you've got your ancillary rooms, and then you're going to have your big meeting, like your big center room. And so this is your wizard's tower itself. These are the rooms you need to incorporate. At the side of the entrance, when the players first come in, you're going to want an encounter that shows the majesty of this tower. So what are you going to do? Well, maybe on the ground is the shattered remains of a gargoyle that your player characters see. Meanwhile, they can also spy another gargoyle perched atop perched atop the wall, overlooking the courtyard that leads to the tower. This can warn your players that there is an encounter here where one of the gargoyles suddenly springs to life and attacks. That gives you another great encounter that's thematic and fits with the setting and is starting to tell the story. These are traps and things the wizard set to protect himself from those he saw as a threat. Now let's look at other things. Maybe by this point, we're going to say the wizard is long dead. The apprentice has been dead even longer. The apprentice was killed when the wizard murdered him after some perceived slight in his paranoia that drove him over the edge. The wizard killed many adventurers that came to try to seek him out, innocently not knowing what was going on, seeking him for knowledge or aid, and they wound up being his victims. Maybe there's a pit behind the tower filled with the ashes of those that he slew, maybe even containing some of their magical items and their treasure, something for players to find. Maybe this is why they're there. Maybe the players are looking for an item that this wizard supposedly has, or this was the last place it was seen. The wizard himself, also long dead. This place has not been upkept for a long time. So the wizard he locked himself in his private room with the arcane lock spell so that no one could get in because he feared the outside world. He feared things that he called the ghosts. Maybe they were real. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're the ghosts of his victims or even the ghost of his apprentice. But he feared them, and he eventually died of starvation in his own bedroom. And this place has sat ever since. So far, maybe you can add little bits of detail to it. Maybe the vines and the overgrowth has started to reclaim the tower, and so large curving vines wrap around the outside of the tower. Uh, this was a wizard, so there's still light here. Continual flame spells burn forever, and they illuminate. There's still an eerie green glow coming from the barred window that leads to to what was once the wizard's study. Maybe there's other creatures. We mentioned that maybe there are vines and overgrowth. Well, maybe this overgrowth is warped from the magic in this area that has that has been there since the wizard used to perform rituals and whatnot. And maybe this has formed into a shambling mound that can attack the players at the least when they least expect it, coming out of the muck and striking at them. And that's the outside of the tower. We're already telling a story without having to reveal this to the players, but we're looking at verisimilitude. Why is this here? How does this work? Maybe inside the tower, when we know there was an apprentice who died, so maybe his ghost is wandering the place. We know that there was a laboratory where the wizard did his experiments and his summonings and things like that. So maybe locked in the laboratory is a demon driven insane from years of being trapped within a summoning circle as the wizard passed away and he had no way to escape. And maybe this demon will try to manipulate the players into freeing them. Maybe they will free him and he or she will depart peacefully, maybe make a deal with it, maybe gain some information or some insight. Maybe it's insane and will attack, attempting to wreak havoc upon the world and lay your players to rest. It could be encounter, either combat, social, but it gives you another thing that you can add to the game. And of course, you've got the wizard's study. Maybe there's spell books, maybe there's scrolls, there's treasure for players to find. And of course, we have the wizard's study himself. Maybe inside you, or the wizard's not study, the wizard's bedroom. Maybe inside you just find the emaciated, long rotted corpse, decayed, laying on the bed. Maybe there's a spirit or a specter of the wizard, still paranoid that those would come for his secrets, that still haunts these walls. You can also add other things, like, for example, we mentioned that there's a kitchen. There was somewhere where they prepared food. Well, maybe in the kitchen, the food at this point has rotted and deteriorated away, where it is now overgrown with mold and fungus, and maybe insects inhabit them. And maybe even if you want the magical energy of the tower, like maybe when it created the shambling mound, it created something like maybe a black pudding or a creeping mold that can attack players when they enter that room. That gives you another encounter that you can that you can send at your players so they can have things to do. This tells a story and a narrative that makes sense and will more deeply enrich the setting and bring the players into it when they can start putting things together. This gives you a great opportunity to really tell a story through setting itself rather than just having them get a bunch of exposition. They can figure it out as it goes. Now, in real life, I'm an author. This is kind of what I do. But one of the things that you can do here is in writing, we have something called a story Bible. And a story Bible is like a document that is just for the writer, that puts out the logic and the things in the world that the reader doesn't necessarily need to know, but we need to know to keep internal consistency. In this case, you're writing out this story Bible, this backstory to this tower and this labyrinth and why it's here and what it's for. Maybe the players don't know. They can discover. Maybe if you want to share this one, maybe in the wizard's bedroom you find a diary that has entries that show his deterioration as he goes into his more paranoid fits, and he recluses himself and he locks the door fearful, and he dies of hunger alone, fearful, in his bedroom. Whatever you want to do, you can use that to tell a story and tell a narrative, and it'll bring your players in. It will create a more whole experience for an adventure. And suddenly you're not just, well, we have a dungeon, we're going through it. Now you have This is a story. This is a setting. We have a reason you're here. We have a reason why all of these things are here. Everything here makes sense. And also, coming up with things like that is just fun. So when you're going to go ahead and make an environment, make an adventure, make sure that you're telling a story that fits in all aspects and all areas of it. Now, you'll notice one thing that's important that I've put in here, and this is a little off topic, but not much, is I've put in a lot of room for encounters. And that's because there's often a problem in Dungeons and Dragons that novice game masters make. And I'm going to kind of go into it, and it's a little soapboxy, so I apologize in advance. A lot of game masters have kind of learned how to play off of live plays like Critical Role or Dimension 20, things like that. The problem with Critical Role and D20 is that they're entertainment, and they're also professional voice actors. They have interplay that takes up the majority. Combat isn't a real big thing. In most games, combat's important. Not only is it important, but the game is actually balanced around a certain number of combats per adventuring day. This allows things like short rests, which allow some of your more martial characters to get back some of their abilities to use them more often. Well, also, it makes it so that wizards can't just blow all of their big spells on one encounter, and thus they can Nova your encounters down, and it seems like they have more resources than they'll ever need because you're not wearing them down along the way. So always have encounters. That's a big part of Dungeons and Dragons. It's a big part of your typical dungeon crawl. It's a reason why these things exist, is to maintain that balance in player characters and give everyone a chance to shine and a chance to enjoy what their character can do. A wizard may have narrative options, but that wizard has to balance using those spells for those narrative options versus what they're going to need in the combat encounters or even non-combat encounters. Maybe the demon that the player characters encounter doesn't speak common or only speaks infernal, and none of the player characters speak infernal. Hopefully someone has something like a comprehend languages spell that they can use, but if they're using that spell slot on comprehend languages, or if they're casting it ritually, whichever, those are resources that they have to manage, and it brings another layer of the game mechanics into the world and makes it feel a little more rich. Suddenly, when the wizard knows that they're going into an environment, they have a chance to prepare the spells that they're actually going to need for the day, rather than just kind of having like a copy and paste drop down list that they prepare all the time. It's something to think about, and gives those characters and those players something to think about as well, that makes them more invested in their character and what's going on. So that's my topic on that. We're going to move on to my second topic of the day, and this one is a little bit. I know dungeon masters kind of have a problem with it sometimes, especially new dungeon masters, and that's because of kind of how modern gaming is a little different from older gaming where I come from. But I think we can still learn from the past, and I think there's value in it. I am not like a Luddite. I'm not one of those people who says, I think the term is grognard. I'm not one of those people that says the old ways are the only ways and you should only do it the only way. Yeah, the old way is the only way and that's how you should do it. Anything new is bad. I don't believe that. I do believe that that certain things from the past are good and certain things from the present are good. There have been improvements, and then there have been things that aren't improvements. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. This topic I call when to say no, how setting limits can enhance the game experience, and why just letting people do whatever they want can be very bad. So it's a Dungeons and Dragons thing these days, where players can just kind of do whatever. And they can make whatever. They have access to all the books. They have access to all the spells and all the books, all the feats. And they can build whatever they want, whatever weird kind of thing. Then they run around with non-human races from Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes or Tome of Foes or whatever supplements you're allowing in your game. Monsters of the Multiverse or whatever you're allowing. And you end up with what people sometimes on the internet call the menagerie or the traveling zoo. That is where you have like a tabaxi and a raven person. You've got a number of a kenku, maybe. You've got a lizard folk. And so none of your players are playing the kind of standard fantasy thing. There is nothing wrong with this if that fits the setting of your world. And this kind of wraps around back into the first thing, but I think all of these topics bleed together in some degree or form. If you're running a game set in an established setting like Forgotten Realms, you're going to have to look into how that's going to look to the average person, right? These are not common races. These are uncommon. And they're not going to be viewed necessarily positively by everyone. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in my last topic, so we're going to kind of move on from there. But we'll focus back to it when we get there. And I promise all of this is going to make sense. So sometimes a player wants to do something that is going to break your game. If that's the case, for example, let's say you're running a campaign where one of the big themes you wanted was for player characters to have to scrounge for food or to survive in the wilderness for extended periods of time. You're going to want them to plan things like rations and hunting and different activities to feed themselves as they travel. Maybe it's in a very desolate location, or maybe it's just a deep exploration in jungles or some such. You're going to want them to have a way to do this. And in 2014, I run 2024 these days, but I have run 2014. In 2014, there was actually a character background that could completely and totally invalidate that entire premise. It was called Outlander, and if you had Outlander, you could always find food. It was one of your background traits. This isn't in 2024, thankfully, but if you're running a game where you want that to be a big theme of your campaign, survivability and rationing and managing of resources like that, you're very well within your right to go, hey, you're not allowed to take the Outlander background in this game because of this reason. You're also well within your rights to address spells that could become problematic. Another problematic situation with this is if someone plays a druid and takes the Goodberry spell. It does mean they're spending a spell slot each day, which can be a major thing, but that one spell slot of one first level spell, which it's even possible to get it where they're not even having to spend a spell slot if they take Magic Initiate or whatnot, where they can just feed the entire party and they never have to hunt, they never go hungry, they never have to worry about rationing food, where they're going to find water. They're taken care of. You're well within your right as a game master, as a dungeon master, to just look at that and go, no, you can't take Goodberry. Goodberry is banned in this campaign. Or alternatively, maybe you can make the component for Goodberry, which is you need berries in your component pouch, which normally are just there, but you can say, you know what, that's not, you only have so many berries in your component pouch, since they have to actually be consumed, that you can cast the spell. You're well within your rights to do that. You're allowed to modify things as the dungeon master. You don't have to run the game what they call raw rules as intended. You're allowed to say, no, we're going to do things differently for this game. You are the game master. You have the right to say no. There are other things. Maybe, for example, this is one that I've seen a lot. Dungeon Masters Online will complain about player characters taking a spell called Silvery Barbs. Silvery Barbs is a spell that your player characters can cast as a reaction that forces an opponent to re-roll a d20. So if they are rolling against a person with high AC and they hit, you can be like, no, Silvery Barbs, re-roll that, so hopefully you don't hit. Or this person rolled a critical hit against you. Well, no, I'm going to use Silvery Barbs so he re-rolls it so he doesn't get the critical hit. This frustrates a lot of GMs, and it really shouldn't, and here's why. Most games, the player character should not have access to Silvery Barbs, and you're probably sitting back going, well, why? Silvery Barbs was featured in a book called Strixhaven. Now, for those of you not familiar with it, Strixhaven is a setting from Magic the Gathering. It's part of the Magic the Gathering D&D crossovers, which is Strixhaven, Ravnica, and Mystic Odysseys of Theros. Those are Magic settings. They're not part of D&D. If you're not from those settings, you can't get that spell. without DM permission, and it's not really meant to be part of the basic D&D spell selection. And you're well within your rights as a game master to go, no, you can't select that spell. That is something you can do, and you should never feel bad about that. If you're running a game that's going to be mostly about heroes facing off against creatures and righting wrongs and doing the basic hero thing, and a player character comes to you and says, well, I want to play a chaotic evil rogue that wants to assassinate people, you're well within your right to be like, no, that's not going to be a thing that is going to be in my game. You're well within your right to say, no, this doesn't fit the theme of my campaign. This isn't what I'm doing. If you want exotic races to actually be exotic and rare, unless that's a story that you're wanting to tell about a group that is completely unique, you can. It's perfectly fine to say, I don't want exotic races in this game. Or it's even personally fine to go like, hey, I'm only allowing one exotic race in this game, and so you player characters can kind of decide amongst yourself who wants to get it, if anyone. You're within your rights to say that. Never feel like you have to say yes to a player. A lot of players, a lot of game masters will give you the advice online, and unfortunately, I think these are more armchair DMs. They don't really run games. They just kind of are parroting things they've heard. It's very common when you go on Reddit. I'm not trying to rag on Reddit or other game masters, but it's just something I've noticed where I've listened to these people, and obviously they're more what we call whiteboarding, which is where they're kind of going off of this framework of all possibilities are there, and uh, the problem with whiteboarding is it leads to weird problems. Like, people who whiteboard will assume that, for example, wizards are overpowered because they can have every spell for every occasion, without the realistic thoughts of, well, yeah, but did they prepare? One, did they have all these spells? Two, did they prepare all these spells for that day? Three, how are they balancing handling these encounters, these non-combat encounters with these combat encounters with these spells? They only have a limited number of spell slots. And so that's called whiteboarding, and it's a source of a lot of online drama, especially if you're on Reddit. You'll see people talking about the caster martial disparity. That's a completely different topic for a later date. I will address that in the future. That's going to be its own thing. It's going to be a long and in-depth discussion on that. In any case, as we kind of said here, some game masters will tell you, and then some people on them will say, you should never say no. You should say yes and. No. Absolutely not. You should never. Yes and is an acting tool for improvisational acting to improve improvisational acting skills. It is not a way to run a role-playing game. It should never be a way to run a role-playing game. You should never be beholden to that. Should you say yes and sometimes? Yes. Should you say yes but sometimes? Yes. Should you say no? Abso-freaking-lutely. Never be afraid to say no in order to make the game better. Sometimes being able to do anything with no limits is a lot worse than sticking to a framework. It's just something to consider. When and how to say no is always a good thing. You don't have to be a jerk about it. You can let them down easy, and you can explain why. For example, with the Goodberry thing, you just have to say, hey, look, this campaign is going to be a lot about survival and scrounging materials and scrounging for food and whatnot. And because of that, I'm not going to allow the Goodberry, or I'm going to modify the Goodberry spell so that it doesn't actually feed you for the day. It can be used as a health potion thing, but it can't be used for like a food source. You're completely within your own right to do that, and you should without really hesitation if it's going to improve your game. If it's going to ruin your game, remember, you're also the DM, and you're supposed to have fun too. And if someone's basically saying, well, with this one spell, I can make your entire game premise fall apart, you're within your right to say, no, that spell doesn't exist. We're going to move on to another topic now as we come into our halfway point. And we're going to talk a little about a word that has become kind of a dirty word in modern gaming, and that's a word called alignment. So alignment has a really bad reputation because a lot of early gamers especially kind of abused it and didn't exactly do it right. This is an issue. So everyone has heard about the lawful stupid paladin. the lawful super paladin is a paladin who is so Dudley do right that they go into the realm of absurdity. That's not really a thing. That's kind of more whiteboarding hyperbole than anything else. Alignment consists, at least in D&D, alignment and Pathfinder 1e, doesn't exist in 2e. Alignment consists of two parts. First, you have your view on order and chaos, or order and freedom. And then you've got your alignment toward altruistic and malevolent action. Between those is a balance point. That's your neutral points. So if you're a lawful character, you believe in order. Maybe you believe in a strict moral code. Maybe you believe in the laws of the land. It doesn't necessarily have to mean the actual laws. You believe in a certain order, a way things should be done. And you believe either one of two ways. Either you believe in order for the sake of order, that would be like lawful neutral. Maybe you're a person who is, this is the law, I don't care if it's right or wrong, we're going to do it this way because that's how it's done. Like Judge Dredd would be a perfect lawful neutral character. If you're going to look into lawful good, you're a person who believes in law, in order, in kind of a code, in a structure, and you believe in altruism, and you believe that this order and structure benefits the people. Okay, so you're looking at it in terms of that, and the order is good and helps people, and good laws are just, and just laws help people, and therefore just laws are good, so you have lawful and good. Then you've got your opportunity for lawful and evil. So in this case, you also believe in these things of chaos and, oh, hold on just a second. Okay. Thank you. That was our store owner, Tony. Hey, Tony. Apparently our camera shifted, so you've been looking at me off kilter this whole time. In any case, we're going to talk about lawful evil now. Lawful evil in and of itself is you believe in laws, but you believe in laws to a point where they should oppress and strengthen you and you alone. So this is different from saying laws and we follow the laws. This is the laws should serve me. I believe in the laws because they benefit me and probably at the cost of other people. So I'll give you a perfect example of lawful evil. Let's say you're a ruler, right? And you control a land. You're a baron or a king or whatever. And you make the rules. And you have a strict adherence to this is the law. And anyone who steps outside of the law will be punished into the harshest way possible. Up to the point where you're making laws now that are things like, if you dissent against me, then that's a crime punishable by being whipped in the stocks. That's a crime punishable by imprisonment. You will be re-educated. You will be imprisoned. You could even be killed if you are questioning the orders of the ruler. These are options that you have if you're lawful evil. That might be what they do. A person who believes in law and order, but at the same time believes in trying to use law and order to harm others. This can make a great antagonist, and you can even have a player character that can do this if you're allowing evil characters, referring back to when to say no earlier. Then we've got the opposite of this alignment. You've got the people who believe in chaos. So let's look at chaotic good, for example. Chaotic good often gets like a weird rep. Chaotic good believe in freedom, and freedom is good. They believe that laws and order are just there to oppress people, and that people should be free to express themselves however they want, and that freedom is a good thing that strengthens everyone around them. This is their core belief. You can really run with that. Maybe they're a pirate on the high seas, but they're not like, they're like an anime pirate, right? They're not actually like pillaging and burning villages and attacking ships. They're a sailor. We'll call them a sailor. It would work better. So they're like a sailor who believes in freedom and friendship, and they're loyal to their friends, but they don't want to tell anyone else how to live their lives, and they don't want anyone to tell them how to live their lives, and they believe in spreading good, and that's freedom, and it's fun, and it's great. I would say, if you're going to use a modern example, I would say Luffy from the popular One Piece anime. Luffy would be chaotic good. Then we have probably one of the more problematic alignments, which is chaotic neutral. Now, I'm going to explain chaotic neutral in kind of more of an old school way. Chaotic neutral is much like law is law for the sake of law. Chaotic neutral is chaos for the sake of chaos. Chaos can be freedom, but it can also just be chaos for the sake of chaos. In this case, they are the people who burn it all down at all times. Everything must be in flux, complete anarchy. They don't care if it benefits them. They don't care if it doesn't benefit them. They don't care if it enriches lives or not. They believe that any kind of order, any kind of structure, anything that imposes will on anyone else is bad, and they oppose it. They are in it for chaos's sake. Back in the day, when people would ban evil alignments, chaotic neutral used to be referred to by a lot of gamers as chaotic neutral is the alignment when you want to play an evil character, but your game master says you can't play an evil character. This is also where most of the annoying arguments you will ever get on alignment come from players when they say things like, it's what my character would do. Every game master that I have ever met in my entire life, and I've been a dungeon master for 37 years. I've been around the block. Every game master I know internally cringes when they hear those words. Your character, and this is a little tangent off topic slightly, but your character is under your control. Your character does not have free will. You have free will to control your character, but your character has no agency. It is not, it's what my character would do. It's, I want my character to do this because I think it fits with how they behave. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. You are the player. You make the decision. Your character has no agency. You are in charge of that. If you're being a jerk and having your character do jerk things, it's not because it's what they would do. It's because you want them to do it. At the end of the day, anything else is an excuse and should be slapped down by a game master harder than the most power gamey super twink build that I've ever seen. The answer is no. Dead stop. Chaotic neutral is no different. Chaotic neutral is chaos and freedom for the sake of chaos and freedom. Not good, not evil, but simply to break out of the mundane. It's a very difficult alignment to run, and often is referred to, and at least it was in older versions of D&D, and I think it still holds true today, it is someone who does suffer from some type of mental illness. And I'm not ragging on people with mental illness. Full stop. I have bipolar too. I have my own mental issues. I know people who are complete chaos gremlins, and they don't have any mental illnesses. So just because you're chaotic neutral doesn't mean you have mental illness, but you're going to behave like your stereotypical person usually with a mental illness if you're actually trying to be chaotic neutral. It's a very difficult alignment, and every game master should really consider strongly whether or not they want a chaotic neutral character in their party. Next is chaotic evil. Whereas the lawful evil person believes in law and order that benefits them, the chaotic evil person that benefits them at the detriment to others, the chaotic evil person is about chaos and freedom that benefits them at the detriment of others. Okay, this is a very important distinction. When we're talking chaotic evil, we are talking about people who will wantonly murder because it sows chaos, it sows fear, it creates panic, and it hurts others, and they will go out of their way to hurt people. Whereas a good person will give of themselves to help someone else. They are altruistic. An evil person will go out of their way to hurt someone. A neutral person may be more selfish. They'll do what benefits them, but not necessarily at the detriment or benefit of others, whereas an evil person will do what suits them to the detriment of others. That's an important distinction between neutral and evil when it comes to your morality. And I'll kind of go into that with sort of giving some examples. If you are a lawful evil person and you see a situation where you can use a loophole in the law to evict someone from their home, you could let them stay in the home, or and maybe you could use that to your advantage, right? Like you could say, I'm going to let you stay in this home, but I'm going to get something out of it. You're going to have to pay me higher rent. You're going to have to give me your daughter's hand in marriage. You're going to have to do something that benefits me at the detriment of you. You don't want to give me more money, but I'm going to take more money. You don't want to give your daughter to me, but I'm going to take her anyway. I'm going to use this law loophole. I'm going to hold it over your head, and I'm going to make it benefit me. So then we have the lawful neutral person. The lawful neutral person doesn't want to hurt people, but they do act in their own best interests. That's why in previous editions of D&D, I think they're unaligned in 2024 and 2014, but in previous editions of D&D, animals were considered neutral alignment. And the reason they were considered neutral alignment is because animals are inherently selfish. They will do what benefits them the most, what they feel benefits them the most. This isn't evil. They will kill other animals in order to eat. This is selfish, but it's not evil. Neutrality can be selfish and self-serving, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's evil if there's no malice involved. With evil, there's actual malice involved. If you're chaotic evil, and you have the same situation where you have the ability to evict someone, you could do like the lawful evil person and use this loophole. Or you could just kill them on the spot, murder them, do whatever you want with them. They are criminals. You have free reign to do what you want. You're not going to worry about if there's a loophole or not. You want to hurt them, and you don't care what the order says about it. You don't care if you're following a code of order. You don't care if you're following a code of conduct. Nothing will hold you back from doing what you want to do, and what you want to do is hurt people. The only reason a chaotic evil character will not actively go out of their way to hurt someone is if for some reason it doesn't suit their long-term goals. But their long-term goals are never good. But even then, there's an important part of alignment that people always miss. And now that we've kind of gone over the alignments a little bit to kind of talk about them, we're going to go a little bit into what they actually mean. In terms of, from a setting standpoint. First of all, full stop. Dungeons and Dragons and most role-playing games do not have subjective morality. They use objective morality. Okay? We have spells like Detect Evil. We can objectively tell when something is evil or good. There are certain actions that are always evil if performed, regardless of why. There are certain actions that are always good, regardless of why you're doing it. A lot of people make the mistake of believing that in Dungeons and Dragons that morality is subjective and the ends can justify the means. That is not how this works. The ends never justify the means. The means are all that matters. If doing good is what you're doing, you're good. If you are playing a character that does bad things for the greater good, like, say, the Punisher, or, say, any other anti-hero that does bad things, and they know it's bad things, but they're doing it for the greater good, maybe you can argue neutral, but you're not going to get good. You might get evil. In fact, you're most likely going to get evil. They're doing evil actions. Regardless of their justification of why they're doing it, they're doing evil actions. And those evil actions are what matter. people go, well, my character doesn't see what he's doing as evil. No, that doesn't fly. Everyone in their own mind believes that they are the hero. Everyone justifies everything they do. If you can't justify, it would be pure insanity for you to do something that you can't justify. No one can do something that they can't justify as doing the right thing. Maybe they're hurting someone so that they can help someone else. They're still hurting someone at the end of the day. They're executing people who are, maybe you have a situation where the people in the village are going to starve to death. And you realize, like, you're in charge and you're like, well, we need food. We're going to starve. We have no other way to get it. We have people who are old and infirm. They're probably not going to make it anyway. I'm going to execute the old and infirm people and the injured people, and we're going to turn them into food. This is the plot of actually the movie Alive. A bunch of people in a plane crash resort to cannibalism. I am not advocating for cannibalism. But what I am saying is that that's an evil action. You are murdering innocent people. It doesn't matter that you're doing this to try to survive and save the more people that you can. You're doing something evil, and you have to accept that. Now, just because you do something evil does not mean it shifts your character's alignment. You have the freedom in that. You can do an evil act occasionally. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone makes a bad choice. Everyone goes against their wishes. One change does not make you fall. This is not 2nd edition AD&D, where one mistake was all it took to fall as a paladin. Your alignment is how your character acts generally. And important, again, how they act, not what their goals are, not what they justify, but what are they doing? Is it good or evil? Does it hurt people or help people? That is the end question of good and evil. Now I'm going to bring up, again, like it's objective. It's an objective thing. We can measure it. There is a thing in Dungeons and Dragons called elemental evil. There's a whole module about it called the Temple of Elemental Evil. It's an actual force in nature that can be quantified and measured. There are entire planes that are evil aligned. You can't work that in with subjective morality because it's not a subjective thing in a universe where these things exist as absolutes. None of this matters in terms really of how characters act. Just because a character has an evil alignment doesn't mean they have to believe they're evil. They're evil, sure, but they don't see it that way. You can have that, and it doesn't change anything in terms of how they act and what they do. But at the same time, it's when you start trying to bring actual alignment or things that are alignment driven. So, for example, let's say you have a sword that can only be wielded by heroes, only those who are pure of heart and good. You have a person who believes they are doing the right thing. They are bringing order to chaos. They are destroying things that are destroying order, and they are making things better for everyone, even though people are suffering now. Like, it will all be worth it. They are doing what they're doing to bring about a better world. Yeah, they're still evil. They still can't use that sword. And maybe that is something you can use in game. That can be something you can use where alignment is good. You have a character who believes what they are doing is right, that they are in the right, that they are justifying all of their actions, and then they try to pull the sword of heroes, and it won't leave the stone. That can be a great vehicle for drama in a game, and can be a great reason for a character to change their behavior, their actions, their outlooks. There's a lot of drama there, great role-playing potential, and it all hinges on the subjective morality. I can go on for days about how alignment can be used in this fashion to further the narrative and to make the game more enjoyable for everyone, and to make the game feel more whole and complete. I don't have enough time to sit here and do that today. That would be a topic of its own discussion where we have other people in the audience and we can talk about different things. I will set that up in the future, just not for today. But having said that, hopefully that makes you think a little about alignment before we move on to our last topic. And this is kind of one I'm really excited about, but I also know is pretty touchy and might rub some viewers the wrong way. For that, I apologize. I call this topic isms. How to handle more mature topics in your game in a way that everyone at your table can be comfortable with. First off, I'm going to state this clearly. You do need a session 0, and you need to talk about the themes and topics in your game with your players to decide everyone's on the same pace with everything. Everyone's on the same page. This is not an excuse to go, oh, you're too sensitive. No. Every player has limits, and we should respect those. But having said that, once you have discussed those, it's time to bring your isms into the game world. One of the most common ones in Dungeons and Dragons, at least in modern gaming, is to have no isms. There's no racism, there's no sexism, there's no homophobia, etc., etc. Full stop. I am a member of the LGBTQ+ community. I am asexual. I have a partner who is a trans woman. I am part of the community and I work with troubled people. And I say this simply to state that isms in a game are not necessarily bad, they're a staple of fiction. Topics like slavery, topics like servitude, torture, things like that, as long as it's not one of your players' triggers, you can include them in your game. As long as it's not breaking a trigger, they probably should exist somewhere. Now, does this mean that in every single city people could encounter slaves? Probably not. It's a pretty evil thing. It's actually one of those things that I put into the firm This Is Evil arc, and if you've been following my stream, you know my player characters are dealing with a moral situation about that right now. And it's created a lot of drama. It's a great way to see how these isms can enhance the game and make the roleplay more intense. That again, as long as your players are okay with it from session 0. If they're not okay with it from session 0, don't do it. I will state that again. If your players are not okay with it, don't do it. If you're playing with red cards where a player can like go, hey, this is not for me, stop it immediately. Do not try to push the issue if your players can't handle it. That is on you. As a dungeon master, you are there to make the game fun, and if you have done something that is making the game not fun in terms of triggers or going too far or pushing the envelope too far for your players, stop it immediately. I'm going to state that with as much fervor as I can. Stop it immediately. If you're not, though, it can be a powerful tool for roleplay and enforcing setting norms. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a human character in a campaign that focuses on elven kingdoms, and you were the only human in a group, and you were in a deep and xenophobic elven kingdom. You, as a human, may experience some degree of speciesism. You may be looked down upon. You may be dismissed simply because of who you are. And that's an interesting chance for you to roleplay. Maybe you can rise above and show the bigots who are holding you down that they're wrong. You can change their views. If you're not allowing any isms in your game, that's not something that can really happen. If there are no slavers in your game world, then your characters can't fight slavery. Slavery is evil, but if you're going to fight it, if you're actually going to oppose slavers and free slaves from markets and things like this, it's got to exist. If you are going to this is kind of going back to the topic that I promised earlier with the menagerie. If you're in a situation where most of the people are human, or the standard fantasy race of elves, dwarves, etc., and suddenly a bunch of animal people roll up into town, you're going to have some isms. Lizard men, for example, as a species, believe in cannibalism. They eat other sentient creatures, and they see it as normal. It's not even an evil action for them. It's specifically called out as not. It's just part of their culture. But if you're a human and you hear, hey, this dude's a cannibal, that might flavor how you interact with them. You may not be welcoming. If some dude walks up in your town and has the head of a lion and is carrying like a battle axe that has a 3-foot-long blade, you may not be cool with that. And that should be part of the setting. And maybe it's a situation where like you have the human character who kind of has to be the face of the party, because this menagerie, these rare exotic species are not necessarily welcomed. And it can work the other way too. Like, isms don't necessarily have to be objectively bad in universe in terms of effects. I'll give you a perfect example. Let's say you're a tabaxi, you're a cat person in a world where those are rare and people never see it, and you are in the noble city of, I don't know, maybe you're in, pick any noble city that's primarily human. You might find yourself invited to a social function. Why? Because you're unique. You're an oddity. You're an other. Oh, yeah, it's completely racist. All you are being invited to this thing for is because of your species. You are there as an oddity, someone to use as a trophy. This is objectively bad, but your character is being invited to a party. That doesn't mean they're hostile to you necessarily. They're looking at you like an oddity, a curiosity, and you are being singled out because of your race. That is racism. It is not good. Racism is bad. I will state this again. Racism, bad. Always bad. But not all racism is hostile. And that makes your world feel more real. This doesn't even have to be a race thing. It can be all kinds of things. Maybe in your world, does anyone remember the movie Big Trouble in Little China? It's an old movie starring Kurt Russell. Love it. You should check it out. In Big Trouble in Little China, the bad guys are collecting women that have green eyes. If in your setting, green eyes are rare, and a player character goes, well, they're rare, I want to have a character with green eyes, they're rare. That's special. It's unique. It's going to be looked at as different. Otherwise, it doesn't work in the setting. If it's not rare, if it's supposed to be rare, then it needs to be treated as being rare. If your character is an Aasimar, it's a person who's got celestial blood, like they're part angel or part celestial. Huh? No, not really. We'll go into that. That's someone off camera asked a question. Sorry. Regardless, if you're an Aasimar and you're in the holy city, you might be looked at differently. You might get preferential treatment because of what you are, because you have celestial blood. But on the other hand, if you're a tiefling in the same city, you might be looked down upon. You have infernal history. You're tainted. You're evil. And this can work in the other way. You going back to the celestial, right? An Aasimar child might have a really horrible upbringing. Their childhood might suck. Why? Imagine if every adult around you, when you're a kid, remember what it was like to be a kid. Did you ever have someone go, why can't you be more like so-and-so? They're good. You should be more like so-and-so. Or let's say even a situation of maybe a person who's a celestial realizes that adults believe that they're innocent and that they're always tell the truth. Well, that kid can be a terror in secret. They can be a jerk, and whenever the adults are called in to deal with a disciplinary problem, oh no, my little angel, literally, didn't do anything. Or if it's a he said, she said situation, and the other child is contradicting the angel child, obviously the child is lying. This can lend interesting things in your game world. Maybe, for example, in a holy city, you could have that as an antagonist. A character who is not good, who is not who is not righteous, but everyone believes they are, and they're using that and their status of what they are to their advantage, and maybe puts themselves at odds with the player character's party. And this is a chance for the player characters to expose that racism and what's going on. In that situation, racism becomes a positive story element that player characters can rally against. Isms are almost never good. In fact, they are never good. Let's be honest, they're not. Isms are bad. And they are things that heroic characters should fight against. But if you don't have them in your world, player characters can't oppose them. You can't have light without darkness. Light exists to oppose darkness. If you want your characters to be light, they need to have darkness to oppose. Now, again, if your player characters are like, look, I can't deal with racism at all because I deal with it in real life, I get it. And if that's one of their triggers, don't include this in their game. Again, do not include this if it is a trigger. If a player has told you they are not okay with this being a topic in your game, it's not in your game, period. You as the game master, no, negative, never. But if you tell your player characters when you're in session 0 and you go, this world will have racism with regards to species. Elves may not like humans, dwarves may not like elves, very common staples in fantasy. People may look down on tieflings and may not accept tieflings in polite society, things like that. They can make your world feel more realistic if your players can handle it. If your players can't, don't do it. But if they can, and they're okay with it, and it's discussed in session 0, feel free to include it and have something for your players to rally against. Anyway, again, my name is Henry Walsh, and this is the 7th Age of Ascelia. I just wanted to give you some content today, something for you to view, something for you to have fun with. Again, I'm going to ask you to like, comment, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, please toss us a subscription. We're going to try to get more content out. We try to play every single Sunday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. Generally speaking, we try to meet that. Of course, it's holidays, things happen, people get sick. I'm also battling cancer right now, so there may be sessions that I simply don't have the energy to run, and I might have to pull off. Chemo's not exactly fun. We also have a Patreon, which you can find in our About info. We would greatly appreciate anyone who wants to go to our Patreon. There's going to be extra special content for Patreons. There's going to be special interviews. There's a cool little Discord you can join where you get exclusive access to us. You can ask us questions. You can talk to the different people on the show. You can participate in polls that will help shape the game. And if you're like higher tiers patrons, get to do all kind of cool stuff. I think one of our tiers is that we will name an NPC after you, and that will show up in a game at some point. I don't run the Patreon. Part of the agreement that I struck with my players when we decided to turn this into a show was that I run the game and that's it. They run the Patreons, they run the stream, they run all of that. But I am your host. If you have any questions, comments, inquiries, and you're watching this on Twitch, you can send them during our live broadcasts. If you are on YouTube, leave us a comment. We are hosted at Challenges Games YouTube channel. You can also find the link in our info, or you can search for Challenges Games and Comics on YouTube. You'll find it pretty easily. I have a very recognizable face and an epic beard. It's easy to sort me out, to pick me out of a crowd. And I hope you enjoyed this little discussion. I hope it gave you something to think about. Maybe you're just listening to this to have some background information. You're going to sleep. Regardless, we're going to try to do a little more of these. If you like what you've seen, like I said, like, comment, subscribe, let us know, and we'll try to add more content like this. In any case, my name is Henry Walsh. I'm a game master, and